Welcome to the Travelman Podcast. My name is Ben and I'm your travel buddy. This is episode 2 of The Guy That Left Hawaii Till Last. In this episode, Joel, who's travelled to every state of the US, discusses why he left Hawaii till last, and it's more touching than what I thought it would be. So there's a language warning on this episode, and if you haven't listened to episode 1, then listen to that first and come back to this one. We had a great follow-up chat, and it was fantastic. Enjoy the podcast. Okay, so this is going to be a big question for you, but why the hell did you leave Hawaii till last?
Well, I grew up in Southern California, so I know the ocean, and I know Hawaii is a lot different, but I never really had any desire. And I also have this weird thing with flying. I don't like the idea of flying over water. I think that's one of the main reasons I've not been to Asia or Australia, which is ridiculous because if a plane's going to crash, it doesn't matter if you're over water or if you're over a city or whatever. So I never really had any desire to go. But I had done Alaska the year before, and a good friend of mine who owned the back alley bar and grill where I had worked a part-time job for a number of years, he got cancer and he was dying. And about when it started getting really bad, he told me, he goes, look, I know Hawaii is the last state you've been to, and I want you to use the company credit card to buy yourself a ticket, because when he died, the card couldn't be used again. So before he passed, I bought the ticket, and he'd never been to Hawaii, and he wasn't in the military, but I told him, hey, I'll scatter your ashes at Pearl Harbor. So I went to Hawaii, and I went up scattering his ashes in a few places, and it was a real, emotional time and such. But yeah, so that is
for sure. That's really beautiful. Yeah. That's a really beautiful story.
Yeah, he bought me the ticket, and
and
he was an asshole. No, he was a great guy who just screamed.
Sounds like a good
and
guy.
Bellowed, but he would just get over it. And yeah, he got me the ticket to Hawaii. So I may not have been there. I may not have gotten there otherwise.
Wow. And did you enjoy your time in Hawaii?
I did. I was on the Big Island and the volcano was going off. But I didn't notice it. I mean, it was still beautiful. The sunsets actually looked a lot like LA because LA's got all that smog. So the sunsets are very vivid. And the volcanic ash or whatever did it as well. And I didn't have a car, and I hadn't done due diligence in renting one. And you really need a car there. So I finally rented one. It's a beautiful state, expensive. And I was there about 10 days, and I could have done 4 and left. I would like to go back and see some of the other islands for sure, Maui and
Oahu and
I actually was in Oahu because I took one of the.
So you were in Oahu?
Yeah, I went on.
Is that the?
I went on one of the smaller planes to Pearl Harbor, which I didn't want to go to, but a friend of mine here kind of guilted me into it, and I went, and that was a profound experience. There's only a few places in America that I've really felt like an American, which is a weird kind of concept, but Washington, D.C. is one of them, and definitely Pearl Harbor. Gettysburg as well.
Were you proud of being an
Not
American?
Proud,
when
just
you
really
were there?
Felt like being an American.
You just felt more like an American.
You know, and Pearl Harbor and Gettysburg, obviously 2 sites of some of the worst bloodshed in American history, but
bloodshed.
There's almost a sacredness to it, I guess, or a hallowed ground of sorts, but that was
for sure. I want to get to both of those places one day, so hopefully I get there. Do you think, talking about Hawaii, do you think that maybe has the best flora and fauna in the United States? If you were to go to every state in America, do you think that would be the most prettiest, as in the way it looks and, the trees and plants?
It's a totally different ecosystem, I guess, tropical.
Yeah.
I really like when the leaves change color in the Northeast, though. It actually starts sort of in Kentucky, Tennessee, and if you time it right, and I happened to do it in 1994, you can follow the not the migration, I guess, but I think they start turning in more southern climates, southerly, and as you proceed in a northeast direction, you can, not that you could literally see them change, but I mean, yesterday they did not look like that. And it's just that's pretty remarkable.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely. I mean, Hawaii's got different flora and fauna than anywhere else in this country.
Yeah. Look, as I said, it's one place I really want to get to, but I've always found it's just too expensive, and the accommodation is just mind-blowingly expensive. You're paying $500 a night for something that's a 3-star place, and I don't know. I'm the type of guy that's leaving Hawaii till last, because every time I try and plan a holiday, I've got Hawaii on my mind, and then I reject that option and go somewhere else because it's just too expensive.
Yeah, I don't think I think every single form of life, whether it's animal or plant, all came from somewhere else. There's nothing natural to Hawaii. That's true, man. I think it was just barren rock, when it finally came out of the ocean and everything. So, nothing is from there.
It's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, well, they... when did America take hold of Hawaii?
In the late 1800s. It had been...
late 1800s.
Yeah, I think the missionaries went out there in the 1830s, and then it was big sugar plantations and that, and so it was in our economic interest, but we did some shenanigans with the tribal government for sure, and we basically they call it an annexation. We basically just stole it, much as we did with Texas and California, although there actually was a war there. But but I think we took it over around 1880, and it became a state in somewhere in 1950, I think, right around the same time as Alaska.
Yeah, I think Texas and California were Mexican, weren't they? Before the U.S. said, thank you, we'll take that.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people forget. I mean, whether it was Mexican, Spanish, whatever you want to call it, for I think about 200 years before those states were in the Union, there was a huge. They shaped the culture of those states in ways that a lot of people don't think. A lot of people think, oh yeah, California into the Union in 1848. That's when it started. No, it had been around a couple hundred years, and but there's a lot of whitewashing. No pun intended. With history.
No, that's fair enough.
History in America. So
I'm going to ask you probably at the end of the episode just about what you do for OC Weekly. But I thought maybe I can do some questions from the listeners of the Travelman Podcast. They had a few questions for you.
Okay.
And I mean, you can sum these up pretty quick, and you can be as quick as you like, or you can drag it out, whatever. It's all.
How about I just make fun of their names?
Okay, you can make fun of their names. Never. So, Gulven H, he's a French guy, I know him. He said, what state has the best burger?
Oh, I'll say California, just because of In-N-Out.
Okay, In-N-Out. Yeah, I'm a big In-N-Out fanboy myself. Now, this guy called Joel B on Facebook said, why would you want to visit every 50 states? Sounds like a bit of a douche.
Yeah, I would tell that guy, mind his own business, but why not? I mean, especially when, like I said, when I was in 6th grade, I had maybe a third of them written off, and I didn't really consciously set out to do it. But at one point, I realized there was only, there was Alaska and Hawaii, and then just a few on the East Coast. So why not do it?
Okay. Patrick D on Facebook said, "Have you ever been held up at gunpoint?
Never.
When traveling around the US?
I've never had one hint of trouble of that sort, unless it's self-actualized, of course.
We don't want that.
No, my Arkansas story though is kind of in that vein, I guess. I was looking for a place to camp, and I had my road atlas out, and there was a campground at the base of a mountain. And I showed up, and it's probably about 10 o'clock. Never a good idea to camp before the sun goes down, by the way. There were all these state troopers out, and it turned out that somebody had escaped from prison, and they were looking for him. It was a dragnet. So I'm like, well, fuck that. So I drive. So I see there's another campsite at the top of the mountain. So I drive maybe 40 minutes, get up there. Same thing. State troopers. they were letting people camp, and I was like, oh, screw it, I'll do it. And so I slept in the back of my truck with a stick just in case any convict decided to harass me.
What's a stick going to do?
Yeah, exactly. And, I was the only one out there. And every time the wind picked up and leaves rustled against the pavement, I was, doing a startle and all that. But yeah, that was my closest encounter, I guess, with crime, but never been held up. I've held up people quite a bit, but I've never been.
Oh, so you've held up people, but you haven't been held up yourself?
No, neither.
Okay. Neither. All right. Well, Matt D on Facebook has asked what state has the best scenery.
That question's interesting because, America has this reputation, deservedly, of gun-related deaths and all that. In fact, there was a time in Alaska where I had taken a kind of an Uber from one of the parks up there to where I was staying, and in the back, I think there were a couple of Australian women. And they were talking about travel insurance and how they traveled all over the world. And travel insurance in America was so much higher than everywhere else. And the guy that was driving it was a Alaskan native. And I think I asked him how many guns he had. And he said he had 48. And he started discounting him. And I interjected. I said, you're probably the reason why travel insurance is so high in this state. But anyway, so we love guns and all that. Yet what is not talked about much because it doesn't fit the narrative is that we are safer in the United States from violent crime than at any time, statistically speaking, than at any time since the early 1960s. I mean, the violent crime rate has plummeted. That doesn't mean that you can't be a victim anywhere at any time, but we are actually safer. Aggravated assaults. There was a slight uptick during the 90s with the crack epidemic and the inner cities and all that, but really crime in America is more often than not, it's you're in the wrong part of a big city, basically. So, we do have a lot of guns here.
That makes sense.
And of course, every time somebody goes off, and whether they're mentally imbalanced or racist or angry at the world or whatever, we hear about it. But it's a little bit like the plane crash syndrome.
What about the school shootings, though?
Well, yeah,
that seem to be so frequent.
Yeah, they seem to be frequent. But I've kind of looked at sort of studies on them, and they're not as frequent as people think. But it doesn't matter because that is something that is so beyond the pale that one school shooting in 20 years is too many. It's a very polarized issue in America. I personally, the people I trust most with guns are the people who have guns. Everybody I know that owns guns, I don't own them because I'm so stupid I'd fucking shoot myself in the foot. They treat them with respect and they don't go around brandishing them and all that. But, I understand, the argument, well, take away all the guns and there'd be no more gun shootings. I get that, but it's not going to happen. There's, Second Amendment and all kinds of stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that Second Amendment's just bullshit anyway, isn't it?
It's a really weirdly written sentence. It's almost like James Madison invented the comma. It's a very garbled sentence and, obviously open to a lot of debate. Well-regulated militia, what does that mean? But, it's funny. A lot of Americans talk quite a bit about the Second Amendment, and they don't realize there's other amendments in there as well. They think that that's the only thing in the Constitution. But, So you were going to ask another question before I got on.
Matt. Yeah, no, you're right. Matt D on Facebook has asked what state has the best scenery.
Oh, I'd say California again, just because you've got everything. Desert, mountains, ocean. Oh, I need to say one more thing about the violent crime rate. One of the theories, and it's just a theory, because causation or correlation does not prove causation, I think is how it is. The violent crime rate parallels the phasing out of leaded gasoline in automobiles. One of the theories.
Okay. Is that because they were snorting it?
No, lead has, it's a toxic metal, toxic heavy metal, and it can, it leads people to be more violent, I guess. But again,
well, obviously they're ingesting it somehow or breathing it in. That's making them go crazy.
You filled up your tank, you were breathing it, But anyway, again, like I said, it's a theory, and it's just one of the more interesting ones. There's also the theory that imprisoning a lot of young black men will lower the crime rate, and I'm being facetious when I say that, because there definitely has been higher incarceration rates for that demographic for sure. But you put enough people in jail, I guess there's fewer people out. But yeah, it's a complicated issue, that's for sure.
So James C. has asked, which state has a perceived bad reputation but is actually a hidden gem?
A hidden gem. I would say Georgia.
A hidden gem but has a perceived bad reputation.
I would say Georgia for one reason. Savannah. Savannah is a great town. It's a little bit like Austin. It's sort of an oasis. Georgia is a very conservative state. I mean, I think in as late as 1940, they had the highest number of unpaved roads in the country.
Okay.
And it's a very, when people talk about, ass backwards Americans, Georgia usually comes up in the conversation, but Savannah is a great city. It's a very gay friendly city. And what I have found is cities that are progressive in that they're just more tolerant and liberal of everything. I mean, you can walk around the streets of Savannah with a beer in your hand, which is, I think it's great. It's rare for America. And it's just, So I think that you can forget about the rest of Georgia, but, go to Savannah because it's worth checking out.
One of my favorite films actually is filmed, I think, in Savannah, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, with that horrible bastard that the Me Too movement are taking down. What's his name? Spacey.
Yeah, Kevin Spacey.
I actually don't mind the guy, but yeah, all that Me Too movement drives me crazy because you don't know who to believe.
Yeah. Forrest Gump, I think, was also based there, and there's actually a guy that hangs out in the park and he sits on the bench just like Forrest Gump.
Oh, okay. So Forrest Gump's based on an actual real?
No, I don't think he's based on a real person. He just happened to. I don't know if it was a movie first or a novel or whatever, but I think it starts in Savannah. So
okay.
Cool. Okay. And Charleston, South Carolina, is another gem. It's a Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay, I think I need to get myself to South Carolina.
Yeah, beautiful city.
I actually have relatives, second cousins in Spokane, Washington. Have you ever been there?
Yeah, that's Eastern Washington, and have fun. It's not.
So I should avoid it?
No, I mean it's a little more deserty actually. Really? Washington is known as the Evergreen State, and it definitely is on the western side, but on the eastern side, it gets a little more kind of. It's in the Great Basin, I guess. A little more deserty, and it's there's a great university there if you're into college basketball, Gonzaga. I think they're in Spokane.
Okay, yeah,
it's not one of my favorite places, but
okay. And how long's the drive from Seattle to Spokane? Is it a long way?
I'm gonna say maybe 4 hours. I mean, Washington's a wide state.
Yeah. So 4-hour drive.
Yeah. West to east.
Okay. This will relate. Someone on Facebook, Joseph M., who I know as well, has asked, how many kilometers or miles did you think you clocked up while flying, driving, and so forth? You would have clocked up thousands, wouldn't you?
That was one of the topics that you said you might ask about. So because I was delayed so long today by the host of this fucking podcast, I had time to kill. So I looked at, so I kind of guesstimated because, I mean, just in between here and Warrensburg, Missouri, I've clocked 34,000 miles, but you can't really count that in terms of visiting states because if you've been to it once, you can't do it again. So I figured flying, it's only about 12,000 miles because I've driven for the first time into most of these states, whether I was being driven or actually driving the vehicle. It's about 12,000 miles to Hawaii and Alaska. But as far as total miles driven, I would say somewhere around 20,400 miles. And if I would have started in Fullerton where I live and driven completely around the world, I would have driven 25,000 miles. So I've driven about 4,000 miles less than circumnavigating the globe in going to these states. So
You're a modern day Christopher Columbus.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I was really taken by explorers when I was a kid for some reason, and I think everything has been explored. But that was, and also my fascination with the baseball and cities was really kind of, But there's something, I know people all over the world travel. I think the term wanderlust was a German term. But I think there's something in the American character. Traveling, and I'm not quite sure what that is. Maybe in a way it's sort of like this country is kind of always sort of looking for its identity. I mean, who are we really? Are we the citadel of democracy? Are we the great experiment in democracy? Are we, the world's cop? All this kind of stuff. And I think that might have something to do with it. I don't know. Or it might, one of my favorite lines in theater is from Tennessee Williams' play, The Glass Menagerie. And there's a character that says he's a wanderer. And he describes it as trying to find in motion what is lost in space, meaning like you're just not comfortable for whatever reason in your own skin, so you wander and travel. Not everybody does that, obviously. Some people go to these great resorts and eat this wonderful food and all that, but I tend to. Just last week it was Friday, and I realized I had 2 weeks because I'm a teacher and I'm off for the summer at a Cal State University. I realized I had 2 weeks. So I had on my camping gear and I just drove. I headed north, wound up in San Francisco. But I think I kind of like the notion of sort of losing myself when I travel. Sort of. Because I usually travel solo. Yeah. I don't like being encumbered by people who need to do things like eat. I'm kind of being facetious, but maybe not. I don't know. So.
No, that's all right. I've got some other questions for you. So, do you think you know what the coldest place you've ever visited and the warmest place you've ever visited is?
Well, it's hard to beat Alaska for the coldest.
So that would be the coldest.
Yeah, I mean, even though I was there in the middle of the summer, there's still glaciers. They are diminishing rapidly, catastrophically. But yeah, those are frozen chunks of ice.
Climate change.
Yeah. So Alaska for sure. Although the coldest I've ever been was actually in Fullerton. I was hanging out with a bunch of my artistic buddies years and years ago, and we were in the back house, and oh my God, it was cold. It was probably, I don't know. And the hottest place, if you take out humidity, I mean, I would take 110 degrees of arid heat than I would 80 degrees of high humidity. But, Death Valley, that is usually the hottest place in the country anyway. But,
yeah. That's what they state, isn't it? That Death Valley's the hottest place.
Yeah.
Okay. And in regards to the people that you meet along your travels with the 50 states that you've visited, how many of them are you still in contact with? That's from Josip M.
Well, I don't think I'm in contact with anybody that I meet. That's kind of like asking who the friendliest people are. And I would argue that people are friendly if you're friendly, and I'm not fucking friendly.
No, you are very
well.
friendly.
I can talk to anybody from my reporter journalist background. I can start a conversation up with anybody. But I have a theory. I have one rule on the road. It's something that my friend Patrick and I have come up. Never ask locals for directions for anything.
Okay.
Because
why? Because they're going to send you.
No,
the
I don't
wrong
think
way?
it's that sinister. I think. Well, you live in Melbourne, big city, obviously, or so I've heard. Big city. If somebody asks you, I don't know, whatever the equivalent of a 7-Eleven is down there, a convenience store.
7-Eleven.
You know it so well that the directions you give them probably are not going to be the straightest route. You might tell you just might. It's just second nature, and maybe. True. But as an example, just on my last road trip, I'm in Monterey, California. I'm looking for a highway out of there, and there is a woman waiting for a bus, and she's got this American flag bandana, and not that that's indication of anything, and ask her where highway whatever is, and she thinks, and she points, you can catch it that way. So I drive 2 blocks, and what do I see? A sign saying no outlet. It was a fucking dead end, and it's just symptomatic that I don't ask locals for directions. And as far as friendliest people, well, no, that was the question. Oh, people that I have met on the road, no, but I've met a lot of people on Facebook, and I have visited, not a lot, maybe 7 or 8. And I have met them on Facebook, and I have visited them. I'm in contact with them, and I'm going to make sure that Russ Miller from South Dakota listens to this podcast, and I'll give him a shout out.
Excellent. So you're shouting out to Russ Miller.
Russ Miller. It's actually
Ross Miller.
Russ, yeah, he's from LA originally, but he lives in the Black Hills of South Dakota. So, and John Braden in Wisconsin, and Mike Clavey, and a couple of others. So that's one good thing about Facebook. I'm not a big fan of the social media revolution. But
you don't mind Facebook.
Well, no, I hate Facebook, actually. Everybody's got a forum, and everybody's talking, but very few people have very interesting things to say. But as far as connecting with people, I like Airbnb quite a bit. That's
Airbnb's good.
But
okay, so I'm going to give you one final question from a Facebook person, Josep again. He's asked a lot of questions, Josep. What's your best memory of your travels, and can you share any funny stories from your travels?
Well, I could talk about King Middle, which was a incident at a strip club in Lexington, Kentucky, but I will not. I will not.
Okay, don't do it. Do it. Don't do it. Up to you, sir. You can do it if you like.
No, that was just let's just say this performer, this artist had a particular attraction to her middle finger in certain parts of her anatomy.
Right, okay.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not the most spiritual kind of person. It comes and goes. I mean, I'm a playwright and written songs and all that, so I've kind of got it in me. But I remember one time I'm in Rocky Mountain National Park, and it's just beautiful, and I just hit this clearing, and I was just so overwhelmed by just the incredible beauty that I just broke down in tears. You know,
that's no good.
Oh, I mean, no, it was great. It wasn't out of sadness. It was just like, it was just this really, I don't know what it was. Maybe I was high. I don't know.
Maybe
there's
high.
Another time I'm in 1995, I started having anxiety attacks, and I eventually found out where they stem from and got over them, but they were pretty, they're common. A lot of people don't talk about them or whatever, but you feel like you're about to.
I suffer from anxiety.
Yeah. I would get it on planes. I would get it when I was reviewing theater, which is what I've done for 25 years. And I would just be overwhelmed by this urge to get out of the theater, so I was having them on this road trip periodically, and I'm in Boston.
Yeah.
And I was having this really intense one in Boston. And it's one of those things where you're not comfortable anywhere, and just walking around, just trying to, whatever. And I ran across a statue, and I believe the statue was a Samuel Eliot Morison, who was a historian, or maybe not quite sure what he was. But there was a line on there that said something to the effect of, "Dream your dreams and write them, but live them first." And that just totally mellowed me out. And I didn't have another anxiety attack the rest of that trip. Only when I started getting another girlfriend. No, that's not necessarily true. But
did you get anxiety wanting to talk to me or having?
Oh,
to
no,
talk
we're
to
old
me?
pals.
We're old pals. We date back a long time.
Yeah, I talk to you more than I talk to my roommate.
Oh, that's cute. I'll have to talk to you, off air, just in our texts and stuff anyway, before I interview Phil Rosenthal, because I'm more worried about that than anything, about asking him the right question and all that.
That overachieving fucker. All right. Traveling the world, eating good food. No, that's just sheer.
We love you, Phil.
That's just sheer envy. No, that sounds like a great, and hell, he helped create one of the most popular sitcoms in history. So good for him. But
well, there you go. So you knew of him?
Actually, I didn't. When he said that, then I looked him up, and like the Anthony Bourdain thing. I have friends that are just huge acolytes. I could never get into it because food was. I know it wasn't just that, but I'm just not. I'm not a foodie. I know he wasn't a foodie. He was. The few shows I've seen, he was very interesting. But given the choice between going around the world and sampling all the food and anything else, fuck yeah, I'm going to take that.
Yeah,
it
would be pretty.
I'll just put ketchup on everything. What do I care?
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that what the traditional American would do? Chuck like ketchup
I don't
on
like to
everything?
eat, but I will eat anything, and I have one of the highest tolerances for hot sauce and spicy food of anybody I know. I can eat raw habaneros, which are pretty potent. I might pay for them the next morning, but Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do like to be adventurous in terms of culinary, but I just, it's not high on my priority list.
Yeah.
I eat because I have to. I don't know why we have put people on the moon and created a weapon that could obliterate the world, but we cannot put all of our nutritional needs in one pill that we can take every morning.
You know, there's some people out there, though, that think we've never been to the moon.
Well, that's because they probably live on the moon. I think that's pretty
They're the flat earthers.
oh, yeah, pretty short-sighted.
Yeah, absolutely short-sighted. Talking about short-sightedness, you write for the OC Weekly, is that right,
Yeah,
John?
I'm the theater critic. I've done that for 20 years. I also teach at a Cal State University, teach journalism, advise the paper, and I always have freelance writing gigs. Yet I never have any money, probably because I spend it on gas and traveling. I don't know. But
No, that's journalist, mate. My dad's a journalist or was a journalist. Yeah. He never had much money either. And he was the best at what he did. He was a food critic.
Oh, wow.
And probably Australia's best ever food critic.
Oh, wow.
He's been written about. He used to close down restaurants with his articles. People were shit scared of him. His name's Stephen Downs. He's a Stephen, so he's a Stephen Downs, but he used to close restaurants.
Wow. Did he go
from
did
just
he, did he go into restaurants anonymously? People didn't know him?
He couldn't because they had a picture of him up in the, I guess, in the kitchen, so they knew if he came in. They were scared
Wow.
people. Well, restaurateurs.
Yeah, the big tragedies of my life is that I've invested much of my creative and working energies into two fields that, journalism, print journalism anyway, is definitely withering on the vine. I mean, that's
that's nearly gone.
Yeah,
isn't it?
and the other one is theater, and theater is still around, but it's a very marginalized art form because I've written 12 or 13 plays, and I've got one going up, a baseball play in Brea, free plug in Brea in September for all you Orange County listeners.
Yeah, that's cool.
But no money in theater really, unless you kind of hit the pay dirt, get a big player break.
Well, isn't it? Why wouldn't you, if you're a theater writer, try and write a movie script?
I don't like the form.
And try and get that.
When you write a film script, you're writing, you're using images as much as dialogue, and I'm really a word based kind of person. I just
you're more into the words. Yeah.
Someone explained to me once that writing a screenplay is like kind of putting together a puzzle. There's a certain form. The first 10 minutes is lead up, then there's a big or whatever, and I just don't. I've written a teleplay, but for a TV script, but. I prefer theater. It's dialogue driven, and I mean, you still have to show, not tell, and it can be, but it's just prefer that. But I doubt if there are if there are 5 people in America who are working playwrights in 2019, I would be surprised. They all write for film or TV or something like that because that is where the money is, and a lot of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I really loved your article, No MSG Added, part Asian, part American, all funny. That's some of the funniest shit I've read
I got
in
a lot of
time.
Heat for that from that troupe. They call me a racist and this and that.
Nah, didn't come across that way.
No,
at all.
I was bringing up the stereotype of the model minority because the stereotype for Asians is they're great at math and they get great jobs and all that. And I was being satirical, but
yeah,
I wish the people could read a little bit better. But I also understood it. In these days of what about the Asian kid that might have read that, who's terrible at math, who's terrible in school? They already feel bad about that, and then reading, just being reminded of them. But then again, there's only one thing I believe in, and that's the First Amendment. Freedom of expression and. I don't regret anything I write. Yep. I might regret that I wasn't as clear, maybe. But I think our ability to express ourselves is the foundation of the Constitution. And that is, I think, why it's the First Amendment. But like hate speech.
I think you're pretty
even
clear.
Hate speech and all that, as vile and reprehensible as it is. I think the saying is the most extreme speech is what needs the most protection because it forces other people to draw the line into what they think is acceptable and what not. So, But
That's fair enough.
I don't know what Australia's free expression laws or customs are. Is it a bit like a...
We can do the same. We can speak liberally. We say what we want. We can call our Prime Minister a dickhead if we like.
Has the Queen ever been to Australia?
No, yeah, she's been a few times, but we don't really like her. I think we want to be a republic.
Yeah, that whole Commonwealth thing is so archaic, kind of like the Catholic Church and the Pope. Yeah. This guy comes out with this funny fucking hat, and people venerate him, and I don't get it. But
yeah, I'm the same. I don't like any of that crap either.
Well, I'm going to come to Australia next. No, I got to get to Scotland again. But definitely Australia and New Zealand, and I'm going to decide which one's better.
Okay, well, I want you to come to Melbourne so we can hang out. That'd be fun.
I just got to take some...
Valium.
Yeah, some good sedatives to sleep across the ocean crossing.
16 hours later, buddy. 16-hour flight. You can do it.
I've flown to Europe a few times, so I know I can do it. My best trip. Trip is I flew to Europe for a bachelor party in Amsterdam, and I saw Bruce Springsteen in Paris, and got all drunk and blacked out and lost my keys. And anyway,
I want to hear that story one day.
Spent a few days in Belgium, which I really loved, even though Germans that I ran into were like, nobody goes to Belgium, I guess, because they annihilated them in World War I, and the Belgians rolled over and were, come on through. We're not going to do that again. But anyway, my buddy of mine in Boston was driving to Seattle, and he goes, fly here, and then we'll just drive the rest of the way. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll get into Boston and, have a few days to unwind. No, he was packed and ready to go. So the minute I got off the plane, leaving Paris to Dublin and then landing in Boston, we're on the friggin' road. And we caught a heat wave that was rolling across the from east to west in the country, and everywhere we went was setting records. I remember I was in Chicago, and it was like 108 degrees in friggin' Chicago. It was miserable. But anyway.
That's hot.
Yeah.
That's hot. I like the heat more so than I like the cold. So I guess if I was in Chicago at that time and I was a local, I would have been loving it, because I know Chicago's quite a cold place.
I should change my answer. The coldest place I've ever been was Chicago. I saw a Cubs game, and it was like...
And it's windy too,
it was
isn't
30
it?
degrees, and that was miserable.
Yeah, that's yucky. Well, before I wind it up with you today, which I've really enjoyed the conversation that we've had together, Joel.
I'm not really a well-heeled traveler as far as resorts.
No.
Stuff. In fact, on my last road trip, I had one goal, and that was not to spend more than $50 on accommodation, just on general principle, and I pulled it off.
You pulled
because I can't have it.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, Airbnb. I stayed in a youth hostel in San Francisco, the Green Tortoise, which is legendary, and I was twice as old as anybody there, but I had a great time. And
I'm sure you would have had
I bunked with a bunch of Kiwis. Yeah.
Yeah. Bloody Kiwis. They're so weird. No, I like Kiwis. I've got New Zealand relatives and New Zealand friends. So they're all right. They're good people. I was going to ask you one last question. In 2005, it's theater related. In 2005, I was in New York City, and I went to an off-Broadway show. I'm not sure if I've talked to you about this before, but I saw Rotted-Headed Peter or something like that, and it was the weirdest show I've ever watched in my life, and it featured a really large-headed bloke, I think on stilts, but huge head. And it was about him being an ugly, big-headed guy.
My rotten, red-headed older brother?
I think
I've never heard of it, but I just typed it in and...
No, it's Rotted-Headed Peter. Rotted-Headed Peter. Something like that. But it was in the mid-2000s, so obviously it's not around anymore.
Yeah, I never heard of it, but... Was it a musical?
Nah, didn't seem like a musical. I don't think it was a musical. I don't really like musicals, and I don't like operas either. I think operas are crap.
Yeah, I've never heard of that. There's been a trend for about the last 15 years of the anti-musical. They're musicals, but they are very self-referential, and they're kind of send-ups of the musical genre, but also kind of homages and like Reefer Madness, which was the old scare marijuana, smoke pot in the 30s, and you're gonna go on a rape spree and all this kind of stuff. They turned that into a musical. Urinetown, which is a great musical, where you have to pay to pee, and the Book of Mormon, which actually wasn't an anti-musical because that was a full-fledged, but the South Park guys did that. But just really funny.
Yeah, Book of Mormon apparently was awesome.
It's
I didn't
one of the funniest
watch
things I've ever seen.
Wow, God, I would have loved to have seen that. But I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and I'd love to have you back on again soon, Joel, and we can think about something that's travel related, just to have a bit of a chat and get you back on. But it's been fantastic.
I'm going to go to the cities in California that have declared bankruptcy. So San Bernardino and Stockton are on there, and I'll find a couple more, and that ought to be a hoot.
That will be a hoot. Well, is there any way anyone wants to contact you if they want to follow you on any platform or anything like that?
I'm on Twitter and Facebook.
So is that at Joel Beard?
I don't know. What is it? I'm not on it much.
Is it at Cool Bloke 69?
And I have a website, but I never get on it. I mean, people can they can just type in Joel Beers writer, and I'll come up quite a bit. Yeah, it's at Joe Beers. JOBEERS. And I'll start. Yep,
Joe Beers.
There's a picture of me with Kiefer Sutherland. Met him one night at a party, and he was all drunk, and we talked for 2 hours. And at the end of it, he hugged me and he goes, "You're the only person I like talking to tonight." I like that.
Oh, that's cute. All right. Well, if anyone wants to contact me, I'm on all forms of social media.
And I
Instagram.
You have a podcast.
I am at. Yeah, apparently I have a podcast as well, Travelman Podcast. You can listen to Travelman Podcast on every podcast app.
I was listening to it on
Podcast
Spotify.
Addict and so forth. Yep, I'm on Spotify. I'm on also Apple iTunes.
Yeah,
you can.
Funny thing about podcasts, my buddy Mike Brainerd loves podcasts. Just will not shut the fuck up about podcasts.
You should tell him about
I'm going to
mine.
make sure that he listens to it just because he dropped his name. And I would just always resent my friend Patrick also just loves podcasts. Would always give me these recommendations, and I was just no, I don't want. I'm very textual based. I like to read.
Yeah.
But I have since gotten very big into podcasts. I love the Daily from the Times and
cool.
a few others, and so now I did one for a class project that was horrible, but so now now I'm on one. So another thing off the bucket.
Yay!
Next up, Broadway.
Yay! Next step, Broadway. Well, you can tell all your students about the podcast, and that will probably get a few more listens for me.
I think I might have dropped the F-bomb once or twice.
Hey, I think you. Well, actually, this is a good thing. If whoever's listened to this point, it's an hour and 36 minutes and 23 seconds. If you can count the amount of times that Joel said the word fuck, which I've just said for the first time on my podcast, then you won't be getting a prize, but you'll be getting a high five from me if you can count the amount of times that Joel said.
I'll give him a free ticket to my play Rube that's going up in Brea, California.
There you go.
Yep.
Free ticket.
I'm going to say 7.
And you reckon 7? I reckon you said it at least 10 times.
Probably.
Yeah, you probably said it more than 10 times. Like I've said before, you're a bit of a potty mouth.
Well, William Blake once said, "The voice of righteous indignation is the voice of God." So that's my excuse to swear.
And after that lovely piece of work, I bid you farewell,
All right,
my
Ben.
friend.
Well, thank you very much. This was fun.
This was a heap of fun. Thank you.
You too.
Take care, pal.
Goodbye. The funny thing is, I don't know how to hang up because of you. I bought a microphone. No. I'm on fucking Skype. I don't know how to use any of it, but now I do. So always learning.
Well, are you going to keep the
Probably
microphone?
Not. Because it's
okay. What happens
it's
if I want to talk
really
to you
weird.
again?
I showed it to my roommate, and he thought it was a vibrator.
Why don't you have a go?
So it is making weird thoughts creep up in my mind. So I got to get rid
of it. Well, maybe I'll let you have a little bit of quiet time with you and your vibrator shaped
like a space age vibrator. It's I don't, and it's huge too. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why it can't be. I guess it's multi-directional or whatever, but it seems to have worked. So.
I think it's omnidirectional. Is that's a what type of mic again?
It is a ice blue snowball.
Snowball, yeah, snowballs.
Sexual.
Yeah, I know.
I think it is. That is a sexual term.
Yeah, I think so. What, snowball?
It's a snowball. Ice? It's a terrible one. Look it up on Urban Dictionary. You'll endless fascination.
Endless fascination, my friend. Well, I'll be in touch with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good day.
All right.
Goodbye.
Take care, pal. Bye, mate. Bye.